You think you can scare me with that? Her voice cut through the hush, sharp as flint. You brought everyone here just to embarrass yourself, he said, voice trembling. And what happens when they see what I found under those floorboards? She countered, knuckles whitening around the manila folder. He reached for the paper, desperation bitter in his whisper. You don't have proof, you never have proof. She shook her head, pulling the folder away. Wanna bet on that? Between heartbeats, someone gasped. Light through the dust revealed silent faces, waiting. Hand it over now. She stared, breath shallow, then said, You first, confess. His words rattled out, You have no idea. Try me, she whispered. The room waited, every second slick with dread. 43 days earlier, before any folder, any witness, and any trembling hands, two sisters were living out of a minivan at the edge of the woods, and nothing about their lives seemed remarkable at all. The minivan's clock glowed 4:41 a.m. when Dana lifted her head from the steering wheel. Her neck ached. The Ozark air was heavy, soaked into the upholstery, stiffened. The old coloring book wedged behind the seat made her aware of every breath her son drew in the back. In the passenger seat, Bridget lay still, eyes open. It was their 42nd night with no address but Newton County's cracked backroads, and their cash pile was what a cashier might call unlucky. 23 left, and $3 in quarters in a Tupperware dish under the seat. Last year, their mother and her husband had boxed up Dana's things while she was at work, changed the locks, and texted her a photo of her own suitcase on the porch. This is final, don't text back. That finality had dragged Bridget down too. Family wasn't imaginary, even if it was unfair. Friends faded fast after the eviction. Every call got shorter until silence replaced sympathy. Now the only hope came from a thin legal envelope, slid under the windshield wiper while they dozed at a rest stop. Grandma Rowan's estate was apparently a plot of land most folks forgot existed, with a splintered cabin perched tight to a cliff at the edge of Jasper. No plumbing, no power, no value, just the punchline at every family meeting for 2 decades. But with the sheriff's auction only 2 days away, ticking down on a yellowed notice Dana kept reading, digits imprinting themselves behind her eyes, they had to decide. Drive away from the only place left to claim, or risk the last thing the family hadn't stolen. As Dana peeled open the envelope, a faded drawing fluttered out, crayon and grease pencil, a map of the old treehouse behind the cabin, a red X drawn deep under one slat. Don't forget your promise, Dad in ink scrawled beneath it. If you've ever had every door slammed in your face yet couldn't shake the sense there was one lock you were born to break, you'll want to see what the sisters uncovered when everyone said it was impossible. Twigs scraped the wheel wells as Dana guided the minivan off the county road. The long gravel approach was narrow, packed with frost heaves, barely wide enough for their desperate vehicle. You think we'll even fit? Bridget asked drearily, clutching the seat. Just keep the wheels pointing forward, Dana muttered, eyes locked past the bramble. Goosebumps broke along Bridget's arms. This was a place where even the birds seemed to whisper, not sing. Every pop of gravel threatened the axle. They dodged a fallen branch, then a muddy rut that nearly stole the back tire. Rain clouds pressed low and mean overhead, Arkansas in spring, always promising more storm. Dana wiped condensation off the glass with her sleeve, pulse ticking faster. At least if it fell apart, it would do it in private. As cliff walls opened wide on their left, the cabin emerged, tiny, moss-choked, asleep for decades. The front step gave a little moan as Dana set her foot down. I bet it smells like raccoons in there, Bridget muttered. Keep looking for an electric meter, Dana said, unlocking the stubborn door with a key that took more muscle than grace. Nothing flickered to life. Inside, dust made the sunlight fuzzy, hugging a room filled with toppled chairs and ratty blankets. But Dana's gaze caught on the warped window behind the cabin, just beyond a split-rail fence. The skeleton of a treehouse perched at the edge, narrow, rickety, but just as the faded map showed. Let's split, Dana said quietly. Bridget hesitated. Rock, paper, scissors. Her half-grin didn't quite hide her nerves. Treehouse is mine. Dana, decisive, didn't wait for debate. Her flaw had always been persistence pressed into impatience. Creaking up the splintered ladder, her hand found the trapdoor under a loose floorboard. "Imagine if a snake's down there," Bridget called in fake cheer. Dana held her breath, pried the board up, and choked. Under a film of dust, nestled in a velvet-lined box, lay a coin collection, edge-hugged in plastic, each one in pristine, fingerprint-proof slabs. She squinted. VDB penny, Liberty head, the kind of coins you only saw in magazine ads. Certificates tucked inside, dated from before she was born. Bridget called up, voice low, "You find Dad's comic stash or what?" Dana's reply caught in her throat. "No comics," she whispered. "You need to see this." It wasn't just some kid's hoard. This felt deliberate, layered, protected, valuable, hooked too in steel and copper. Her fingers shook, tracing the old plastic casings. 1909 penny, she whispered, "and Bridget, there's a Liberty head." Bridget's foot hit the ladder rung, sending dust swirling. Dana looked up, her throat tight. Those are real." Bridget took the case, squinted, jaw working. "Why'd Dad hide these?" Dana answered only with a shake of her head. In the sunbeam, a yellowed envelope fell out, a note in their father's careful block print. "If you're reading this, you're the last ones left who'd care. You know what's right." The past pressed close, Dad on the porch, hands stained from garden dirt, teaching them how to spot fake coins. "If you see a 1913 nickel, buy it," he'd laughed. Now Dana stared at an honest-to-God Liberty head, breath ragged. "This is bigger than an old shack." Bridget's voice was quiet, shaky. "What if the family knew?" But Dana was already rooting through the compartment. Another layer, flat, with a painter's rag bundled around something hard. It wasn't coins. A hidden panel in the floor, barely visible, the wood warped long ago by rain, pried loose under Dana's fingers. The rag unwrapped to reveal a dozen compact, dirt-streaked paintings, all vivid under the grime. Faces, night landscapes, a red barn she remembered from backcountry drives as a child. "Bridget," Dana's tone was brittle. "Didn't Mom say she lost all the paintings and filed the insurance?" Bridget caught on instantly, face draining of color. "That's fraud," she whispered, voice breaking. Dana nodded, breath jammed in her chest. "And theft for years." Down below, the wind shifted, sending a shudder through the frame. Hook 3, art that was never lost. Dana's heart stuttered as she eased the paintings into the trunk. Bridget's hands hovered over the coins as if the whole pile might vanish. "We take this to the police?" Bridget asked, eyes reddened. "Not yet," Dana said, her voice steadier than she felt. "First, we need to know the real story." They headed toward the Jasper Historical Society, tiny but ancient, a whitewashed building tucked beside the river. Lightning forked in the distance as they parked, coins and paintings wrapped under layers of jackets. Inside, the air was cooler, thick with musty paper and worn brick. Behind a desk crowded with ledgers, Mr. Groves looked up. His reading glasses gave him a slightly owl-like stare. He said nothing at first. "We need your expertise," Dana started, voice tremulous. He studied them, gaze weighing 20 years of family scandal behind their shoulders. "What sort of collection you got?" Groves's cadence was slow, Ozark to the bone. Dana and Bridget presented the box, unwrapping velvet, plastic holders, handwritten notes. Groves inhaled sharply. "Who gave you this?" he whispered. "Our father," Bridget blurted. Groves didn't blink. "This Liberty head, only 5 in the country. Yours, if registered, is worth over $4 million, and that 1909 penny." Dana faltered. "This means..." "Big news, and these paintings, see this signature, local artist, work all reported stolen." His finger trembled over the red barn oil. Lightning again, closer now. Silence tumbled in. Bridget spoke, her words running together. "What do we do before the auction? Our mother, her husband, really wants this." Groves leaned back. "Sheriff's auction won't wait, but if these are hidden here, they belong to the property, not to whoever's trying to buy it off. and insurance fraud, well, that's a federal matter. Dana gripped the box harder, palms sweating. Groves made a short call to a friend, Federal Heritage Division, he said, the words sinking between the sisters. He scrawled letters, made copies, whisper-traded information Dana could barely follow. The truth is coming out, he promised. Thunder broke hard and final. In the minutes that followed, the sisters left, driven less by hope than survival. Rain battered the minivan roof as they pulled away, art and coins locked deep in the footwell. But as the courthouse clock struck noon, the text messages began, from their mother, then from her husband. Demands abrupt and bruising, stop this, you're overreaching. Another, turn over anything you took from the shack or we call the sheriff. Dana stared at the flashing screen, fear crawling hot up her spine. They know we found something, she muttered. Let's meet, Bridget said quietly. At the sheriff's side office, Spartan beige blinds, Dana walked in. Her mother and stepfather waited, faces set. Their mother's voice was brittle as glass. You're not welcome here. The court sent us, Dana replied, jaw tight. It's still our name on the paperwork. I know what you're after. The stepfather's accent slithered against the walls. You sell the land for timber, the highest bidder gets the loot. Dana's words were stone. Bridget stepped forward, holding up a painting. Did you forget this was reported stolen? Threat crackled in the air as the stepfather's eyes darted. Pack your things and leave, he snapped. Stars broke over Dana's vision, but she stood. We're not going anywhere. Hook 5, a family war, not a negotiation. Out in the parking lot, Dana's breath shuddered. Bridget pressed her shoulder, steady, for once impatient. You did fine, but we need backup. They spent the evening in a coffee house, Wi-Fi weak and harsh. Gathering, scanning, digitizing, images of every coin, painting, insurance report. Groves will send it to the feds, Bridget muttered. Plans spilled out. We drop it all on the news, or the Arkansas Historical Council, Dana said. You let me decide, Bridget shot back. They argued in whispers, exhaustion slicing every sentence. But they pressed on, nothing to go back to, and the clock on the courthouse was always a minute closer to the finale. By midnight, the sisters had organized a dossier, photos, appraisals, printouts. Morning, they met Groves outside the Historical Society. It's all in order, he said with forced calm, but you'll be walking into the auction, loud. Dana's jaw set, let's do it. As the auction began, the room was humid, packed with strangers, neighbors, lawyers, the persistent odor of aged coffee. A low din ran underneath the sheriff's monotone. Dana stood at the edge, dossier in hand, Bridget flanking, Groves at their rear. At the front, their mother and her husband waited, posture iron straight, eyes sweeping for any sign of threat. The auctioneer's gavel dropped. Opening bid for 2 acres, cliff face parcel, including all fixtures and permanent chattels. Before we continue, Dana said, stepping forward, I have information that changes everything. All eyes shifted. Groves called, let them speak. In the hush, Dana opened the manila folder, sliding several coins into the auctioneer's hand. Each graded and appraised, documents to match, she said. Her mother's jaw worked, color draining from her cheeks. The stepfather laughed once, sharp and humorless. You think you can scare me with that? You brought everyone here just to embarrass yourself, he said, eyes empty. And what happens when they see what I found under those floorboards? Dana challenged, producing a photo of the paintings, the red barn vivid in the light of a dozen cell phones rising to record. He lunged for the folder, barely stopping himself. You don't have proof, you never have proof. Dana shook her head, standing her ground. The weight of every night in that van filled her with a reckless courage. Want to bet on that? Groves lifted a finger, addressing the front row. This entire collection, coins, paintings, forms part of the property's historic status. Auction must halt. State law. Another gasp rippled through the crowd. His wife, voice knife thin, "This is outrageous. That art was long gone." Dana held up a report. "Reported stolen, filed insurance claim, paintings never left the property." The sheriff took the report, eyes scanning quick, silent. "That's insurance fraud, ma'am." Sweat beaded along the stepfather's hairline. "You first, confess." His bluster thinned. "You have no idea." Dana pressed in, eyes locked. "Try me." There it was, the moment. The room fused with dread, whole lives teetering on the edge of the record. The sheriff lifted a radio. "Authorities are being notified. This auction is suspended pending federal review." Court clerks hustled, neighbors whispered, half the room already pecking furious texts. Their mother lurched, hissing, "You've ruined us." Her husband slumped, eyes dull. But Dana was past hearing. Bridget squeezed her hand, unshed sob thickening her voice. "You did it," she whispered. Groves placed a hand on both sisters' backs, giving them space as the officials hustled the couple outside. The whispers rose, neighbors and rival bidders realizing the shame that was swallowing the couple whole. Federal agents arrived within the hour, unhurried, certain, with badges and crisp binders. The property was declared a pending state historic site, art and coins placed in protective custody, the land itself untouchable pending outcome. The sheriff himself clapped Dana on the shoulder. "You saved this place from the axe," he said, Ozark pride warming his drawl, "and them from thieving another thing that never belonged." When judgment came, it was swift and brutal. The federal claim stripped Dana's mother and stepfather of property. They lost all rights, received nothing for their years of scheming. Insurance fraud charges landed with a hard smack. Townsfolk who'd once joked about the land now turned their backs on the disowned pair. The Historical Society took stewardship. Immediate repairs began. That same summer, Dana and Bridget, with Groves's help, broke ground on the broken-down diner across from the courthouse, a half-rotted shell waiting for a purpose. Neighbors who'd lost jobs found paychecks again. Local teachers curated tour of the restored property. Kids learned coin-collecting tricks from the same guidebooks their dad had left them. When autumn gold leaf swirled up the valley, dinner plates clattered, laughter rose, and no one remembered the sisters as anything but the ones who wouldn't give up. They moved into a house with windows that locked, a mailbox with their name in block print, no gunmetal minivan, no careful rationing of milk. Safety, at last, felt like something earned. Long after the dust settled, Dana looked back only to marvel at what people would try to bury, and what would always surface when someone was brave enough to dig where no one else bothered. Not every story is about starting over. Sometimes you take back what was meant to be yours, brick by careful brick, until there's breathing space for everyone who needs it. If you've doubted whether a single act can smash through years of silence, this story's proof is living, breathing, and hiring part-time help up the hill. In Newton County's good light, truth doesn't stay locked underground, it rises, harder than stone, brighter than silver, and louder than any secret whispered across generations. But of course, stories don't end neatly just because justice arrives. Life sprawls. That autumn, Dana and Bridget learned how little time it took for a small county's wounds to scab over in public and fester in private. They found themselves local legends of the oddest sort, both invited and outcast, emblems of a shake-up Jasper had pretended it never needed and would never forgive. On Wednesdays, as the diner's grill hissed and tired waitresses poured coffee into chipped mugs, old neighbors sat at the counter eyeing the sisters with a cocktail of awe and suspicion. The brave and the bitter came in equal numbers. "Heard you got the feds to crawl up the whole ridge," Mr. Puckett from the feed store told Dana, ducking in out of October rain. "Never seen our sheriff so spooked." He paused, then added slyly, "Place sure smells better nowadays." The siblings laughed, but beneath it the unease lingered. Groves dropped by twice a week, usually at closing. "The land surveys will clear soon," he'd reassure, tracing lines on a map. "That old boundary marker, that's your birthright. The cabin, too, assuming the lawyers stop feuding over details no local cares to remember." "Only took half our lives to pry the truth loose," Bridget retorted one night, sorting coins for a school display case by the window. Groves grunted, pleased and rueful at once. Never saw a fight worth having that didn't cost more than you'd planned. Still, bills and state paperwork didn't wait for emotional clarity. The coins and paintings, after months with the Heritage Division, came back as promised, each one registered, insured, and valued far above what either sister could have guessed. The Red Barn painting found a permanent home in the courthouse lobby. The Liberty Head nickel in a glass case under lock brought busloads of school kids and the occasional serious collector up from Little Rock. If Dana closed her eyes and listened, she could hear children shriek with delight when someone told them the penny was old enough to have sailed through the pockets of a riverboat gambler. In the cabin, restored at last, volunteers with the society scrubbed must and mouse out, sanding the old boards that years before had hidden the evidence. One late afternoon, Dana stood at the doorway while the sunset made golden fire of the valley and remembered scraping her knuckles raw on those wooden slats, mind racing with suspicion, hope, and a frightened kind of faith. "Hard to believe we ever ran from this," Bridget said, coming up the path with 2 mugs of cocoa, steam fogging her glasses. "Back then everything felt like it was running us out," Dana answered, managing a smile. The silence between them was the quiet comfort of old wounds turned to scar tissue. It was, finally, home. But not everyone had been so willing to let the past settle. One blue November morning, a letter arrived at the diner, not in the cold, official envelope of courts, but scrawled in the familiar, cramped hand of their mother. Dana stared at it over the prep counter, weighing whether to even open it. She recognized the looping D from childhood birthday cards, the slightly smudged ink, a left-handed press, forever unsteady. "Do we care what she wants?" Bridget muttered, holding a handful of cutlery, pausing in the act of setting tables for the lunch rush. "She'll keep writing until we answer," Dana replied, slicing open the envelope. Inside, a folded sheet and a photograph in color, minutes faded. The two of them as children, grinning wide under the summer oaks, their father and mother behind, arms awkwardly linked. Written on the back, her mother's note. "Please meet, I can't change what happened, but I have something of Dad's for you. M." Bridget's lips thinned. She wants to confess now or just twist the knife. "I don't know," Dana admitted. Weariness battled against a need for finality, the kind all children crave from a parent, even one who'd locked every door behind her. They debated over plates and stacks of hash browns, but by the end of the day, decision bloomed between them like rain through cracked earth. "If she shows up angry, we walk," Bridget insisted. Dana agreed, heart thumping. No scenes, no bargaining. They picked the courthouse steps, public and in view, noon the following Friday. Clouds pressed low and gray when their mother arrived, alone and older, grayer than before. Her hands shook as she clutched her purse. For a moment she looked ready to turn and flee. Instead, she nodded at both daughters, her mouth a tight, practiced line. "You came," she said simply. Dana didn't trust herself to speak, watching every nuance, whether her mother looked guilty or only weary. Bridget broke the ice. "We've got 20 minutes before the mayor's aide walks past. Say it quick." Their mother managed a shadow of a smile. "You both always gave me hell for being late, didn't you?" The small talk evaporated. She opened her purse and withdrew a battered box, wrapped in the kind of checked kitchen towel they'd all known from the family's old kitchen, patterned red, white, and faded green, smelling faintly of nutmeg and smoke. "This is his," she said, holding it to Dana. "He left it for you. I kept it, shouldn't have. I know you won't ever forgive me. You don't have to." Dana's hands shook as she took it. It weighed almost nothing. Under the cloth, a pocket knife blade worn from years of whittling branches and opening seed packets, a stack of Polaroids showing the family garden in spring, and a folded page from a coin catalog, edges soft, places marked in highlighter. "Keep an eye out, girls, you never know." Fresh tears streaked Bridget's cheeks before she could hold them back. Their mother didn't ask for forgiveness. She did not apologize in words, not exactly, but the silence between them was now heavy with all she could not say. "I was wrong," she murmured finally. About how I tried to survive, how I pretended not to see what your father left. When you lose everything, you grab what you think will last. Dana looked at her and instead of rage, felt only a thudding ache, a tired, familiar pain wanting to heal. Everything we found, Dad left it so we could build something new, Dana said, breath tremulous. Her mother nodded, unsteady. You built what I never could. She stood, smoothing her skirt, looking older than small-town gossip ever made her out to be. You're your father's girls, always have been. Bridget almost said something, some final, forgiving word, but the moment slid by. Their mother gave them one last look, then turned and walked away. They watched her go. Dana slipped the pocket knife into her coat, feeling as if the weight of unfinished business had finally eased enough to bear. Over the seasons, the cabin became something more than a specter of old secrets. The Historical Society hosted coin shows, art walks, and weekend picnics on the lawn. The treehouse where Dana had found the first clue was rebuilt by a volunteer crew, oak rails, cedar planks, a plaque in memory of Rowan family perseverance. Bridget gave tour with a practiced smile, regaling schoolchildren with tales of long-lost pennies and midnight treasure hunts. The diner found its hum, too, a home base for seniors in the morning and teenagers by supper time. Dana took over payroll, banking, the kitchen schedule. Sometimes in quiet hours, she stood at the window watching fog rise out of the valley, pocket knife resting cool and familiar in her palm. When the kitchen was empty, she'd take out one of her father's old Polaroids and study every leaf and smile, piecing together the lost years, memory by memory. One late night, Bridget called across the counter. Think he ever guessed just how close we came to selling it all for gas money? Dana smiled weakly. He told us never to trust an easy answer, which means probably yes. I'm glad we got stubborn, Bridget said, flipping the sign to closed, no matter how messy it got. The wind pressed outside, cold now, carrying promise of snow. Dana let the silence linger before she spoke. Would you do it again, all of it? Bridget's gaze was steady. If it got us here, yes, even with the nights in the van, even with her. Dana nodded, me too. They stepped out together, locking up as frost silvered the grass stretching toward the ridge. Their life wasn't a fairy tale, but it fit them, its splinters and all. The following spring, news arrived from the Heritage Division. The cabin and treehouse, along with the entire parcel, had been granted historical status, the fastest approval in the council's history. Newton County would now be on every Arkansas road trip itinerary, home of the lost Liberty nickel painted bold on new signage by the county line. On the grand reopening day, under bunting and blue sky, Groves beamed beside a local TV crew, explaining legacy and fraud and hard-won restorative justice. Dana and Bridget posed for endless photographs, sisters by the red barn canvas, hands resting lightly on the glass case of rare coins. People came from counties over. Some, old enough to remember their father buying blackberries at the market, pressed envelopes of faded photos into Bridget's palms, images of the lost garden their family had coaxed from dust, of county fairs and wild July moons. Others just wanted a story. You really slept in that minivan? A boy asked Dana, skepticism weighing down his voice. She knelt and smiled, long enough to know every raccoon by name. He grinned, satisfied, and ran back to his family. Kindness returned itself in small ways. The feed store sent free flour for pies, the high school's shop class built benches for the porch. Once late in June, Dana found a paper sack by the diner door. Inside, 12 silver dollars, each in an old gum wrapper, and a note, "For the next sisters in need, pass it on." The handwriting was unfamiliar, but somehow she felt she knew the author all the same. She brought the coins to the display at the cabin, tucking the note in the case beside her father's catalog page. "Stories don't end," she murmured. "They just get passed along." Bridget, restless as ever, took to wandering the property during slow afternoons. She read every clipped article Groves brought about the trial's outcome, about insurance fraud and inheritance rights, about how the county owed the Rowan sisters a debt of gratitude. But what she liked best was dropping down into the hollow behind the cabin, lying on the moss between two sumacs, and wondering how much else people failed to see for all the commotion on the surface. One day she caught a rustle on the old path and found Dana, dirt-smudged, holding a fistful of wildflowers. "I thought we could plan a patch-up by the steps," Dana offered shyly. Bridget smiled, shaking her head in mock exasperation. "You never did like to sit still, did you?" "Don't tell Groves, he likes his history neat." They planted the flowers together, hands aching but hearts light. Above them, the rebuilt treehouse creaked as the wind tugged at its timbers, a sound as familiar and persistent as memory. A year passed, steady and sweet. One evening, as the sun snuck behind the ridge, Dana found Bridget on the porch, reading an old letter aloud into the dusk. "He says here, if you're ever in trouble, look under the floorboards and remember who you are." Dana sat beside her sister. "We did more than look, we remembered, we changed everything." "And we're not done yet." Bridget traced her fingers along the letter's margin. A car rattled up the drive, stranger, silver-plated sedan, city plates. Dana's stomach gave a nervous twist. But when the visitor stepped out, she recognized the face as one of the heritage agents, come to deliver a final packet of paperwork. He handed over an embossed folder. "All titles and rights cleared and recorded," he said, smiling. "It's yours, no strings." Dana and Bridget signed, pens shaking just a little. Beyond the porch, the first fireflies of June flickered over the lawn. With the last dotted I, the agent grinned. "It's a good ending," he said. "Not the end," Bridget replied softly, "just a decent place to rest." After the man drove away, the sisters walked the quiet field, past the treehouse, the wildflowers, the garden coming up bright and determined in black earth. The old coins gleamed in their case, the paintings lined the restored walls. "We never got a map for this part," Dana said, brushing her fingers along the fence rail. "Doesn't matter," Bridget squeezed her shoulder, "we'll make our own." Under the open sky, Newton County's hush felt less like loneliness and more like possibility. The land that had been nearly lost to secrets and greed was theirs now, hard-won, and filled with years of stories still waiting to be told. That night, Dana wrote a letter of her own, placing it in the treehouse, wrapped in the same red linoleum cloth her mother had given back. "For whoever comes next," she wrote, "this place has already been saved once. Save it again every time it needs you, and remember, what's buried is never really lost." She signed her whole name, pressed it flat, and left it under a floorboard, letting the past and the future come together in the soft, forgiving dark. Because in Newton County, things hidden for years had a way of surfacing. Truth rippling out, fines and losses, old anger giving way at last to something better, a chance at peace, and the world made new, one stubborn act of hope at a time.